Welcome to Afro Worldview, Women in Focus, the show that celebrates women from all sectors and all walks of life. And today we have the privilege of having my colleague, a woman who's also known as a journalist by day and an author by night. Some even call her a maverick, but we have the privilege of welcoming Dudu Busan-Dube. Welcome to you, and thank you so much for joining us. What a wonderful life story you have to tell. And I'm sure one day your great-grandchildren sitting around the fire would be able to enjoy all of these nuggets of wisdom and experiences you've had.
Well, Cindy, thank you for having me, first of all. It's a beautiful story to people, but it also has been a lot of sweat and drama and hard work and sleepless nights for me to be able to just publish books by myself, for myself.
And especially as a black woman, a journalist at that, originating from KwaMashu, a township in KwaZulu-Natal, who deposited that seed for you that says you could be a well-renowned author one day?
I think it's just the black women around me. It's not even just about me being an author. It's just being raised by a community. And everybody in your street being your mother, and just also watching the women, you know, before you, just succeeding against a whole lot of challenges and odds. But I think because my books are just largely based on just ordinary people I've met. They're fiction, but you know, the stories are obviously inspired by people I've met, people that have been in my life, people I've associated with through work, and you know, through having fun, through partying. Like, everybody is there. So I think that is just my experiences and interacting with people. That is what you know, just inspired me to be able to do what I'm doing.
Yeah, but a successful author would also have to be a very avid reader, in the sense that you're a bookworm. And where did you source your literature from, especially from a young age?
I do read a lot. When I was growing up, and because I went to a township school, I started high school in 1994. So we kind of like, you know, that first group to get libraries and you know, get books that were secondhand and donated, but you know, it was a library there. So I did read a lot of, they're called Sweet Valley, they're tin flakes, American tin flakes that I wouldn't touch them now. It wouldn't make sense. So I did read a lot of, you know, your Sweet Valleys, your Nancy Drews, and that is all we had to read in English. So I read a lot of that. But then as I grew and I got out of high school and I had more options, I started just liking a lot of African literature, which at that time, and it was in the late 90s, early 2000s, there wasn't a lot of it available. So that's where then you will find yourself reading American fiction or British fiction about, you know, love and kissing, and, you know those cheesy stories. So I read a lot of it. But in the past, I can say maybe 10 years, 12 years, that's where we've seen a lot of African writing coming to us and us having access to it. Because previously, I mean, you'd have Things Fall Apart, Chida Achebe, and kind of a few, and you know, Never's Conditions was written in 1988, and it's in the 80s. I'm not sure about if it's 88, but it was the late 80s. It's by Titi from Zimbabwe, and I personally got to know it maybe 7 years ago. And it's an amazing book, and it's still very, very relevant, and it's still very popular. But it was written in the 80s and published in the 80s, and I mean, that's the
Why do you think that, as you're saying, that some of these you only discover much later in life, be it a referral or somebody on social media, you know, or a book review for that matter? Why do you think we don't have them as bestsellers throughout?
I think that a lot of African books are published overseas. I think that in the continent, South Africa and Nigeria, I would think, and those are the other countries that have been able to just create their own literature and publish it inside the country. And I'm sure a few other countries, but a lot of African books are published either in Britain or in the US.
Okay, well, we'll come back to how you are self-published and why is it that you didn't have an appetite necessarily to go with a big publishing house. But what came first for you? Was it the journalism, a natural progression to being an author, or had the secret writer been in you all along?
My writing actually is... So this is what happened. When I was in high school, I was in matric, my teacher asked me to write something creative. And I did. And I didn't even know I could write then. I was just, I just read a lot, and I was good in the English class. So, and she asked me to write something. I did. It was sort of a homework thing. And I gave it to her, and she raved about it. She was like, this is so great. You know, you're so good. You should try writing. And journalism was the closest thing to studying anything that had to do with writing. And I didn't even know there was a creative writing course that I could do in varsity at that time. And so I studied journalism because it was, you know, the closest thing to writing. And yeah, but things just went really well in my career as well.
Yeah, but you're not a journalist by default, as you were saying that. I mean, you know, part of the skill is that you have the ability to write and capture the audience, etc. So talk us through the trilogy, how that came about of your books, before we get to the big blockbuster, which is the Zulu wedding.
It came about, well, I was always going to write a book because, you know, that's where my journey was going anyway. I listened to my teacher and I believed that I knew I was going to write a book eventually. But I didn't, I waited, and I'm glad I did that because I could have written it in my 20s, but in my 20s I was having fun, I was getting married, I was studying, I was, you know, doing all those things. So when I was about 32, in 2014, that's when I started writing the book. And I didn't sit down and plan and say, well, you know, in July I'm going to sit down and write a book. I was at home just, you know, and I decided to type away, and then that's how the Wife started. And it just so happened that when I started, I was in the zone, so I was just flowing with the story. And I didn't have a story in the head. It came as I went along, and that's why I'm saying it's just inspired by the experiences that I've had.
And which part of your life had you almost ingrained in the Tlomo trilogy?
It's actually my thoughts in terms, I think with Tlomo, the first book, it took me longer to write because I didn't know any of the characters, I was just developing them. And there's a lot of my thoughts there, and there's a lot of her doing things that, you know, that are against my beliefs, and that's why I made it like that, so that I will not be always wanting to protect her as a character and make her a perfect person. So there's a lot of her contradicting me, there's a lot of her being me, there's a lot of my family, your family, my friends, your friends, and the relationships I've been in. And yeah, but Tlomo is closer to my heart. And that's just the first book. The others are totally not related to me.
but obviously you'd be very precious about your work because this is your intellectual property. It does take the blood and sweat, as you're saying, a lot of sacrifice in the writing process. But the motivation and having to being in the zone, that sense of solitude and crystallizing your thoughts. Talk us through that process.
It's, you know, I think that depending on where your creativity is, I mean, people would understand how, first of all, I'm very quiet. I'm very quiet as a person, and I'm very calm. But I always say that I live more on the inside than I do on the outside. So me writing a book and creating all these stories, it's just me being very loud. But because I can't do that verbally, I can do it better on when I type with words on paper. So that is what drives me in my writing, and just being in a good space, you know.
Yeah, but you're very unassuming, and I suppose that's that personality trait that you're saying, that it is more about your work, the words, the characters. You know, you celebrate yourself inwardly, but the books in themselves have become immortalized. Your thoughts have become immortalized, and you are a revered and very well-renowned author. And yet, as a colleague, you just stand in your corner, minding your own business. Do you sort of go in and out of character, if you like, be it when it's a book signing occasion or whether it's in the workspace?
No, I'm just always, you know, when you see me and we see each other every day, that's just me.
Yeah.
And I've just I've sold me as me. You know, I've never had to change. When I go to book launches, this is what you see. You know, and the things I say, what I say on social network, how I talk to people. Sometimes when I'm not in a good space, when I'm like, it's really, really bad, because I also have a problem where the smallest thing can just change everything with me. My mood, and it takes a lot for me to pick myself up and try and be bubbly again. So, and I've found that in some cases when I go to book signings, some people can pick that up, that something is not right. I'm not, you know, I'm not myself. So that's just one of my personality. That's just.
No, I suppose, yeah, we all have our demons, if you like, that we have to deal with as part of your self-actualization. But having to engage again with the public, be it as a journalist, doing your stories, or being as a writer, now you've even gotten an international footprint. Not that, you know, your previous books hadn't, but I think this is probably the biggest career highlight since your first book, which is The Zulu Wedding.
The Zulu Wedding, and the story of the Zulu Wedding is very, you know, exciting. So there's Tideo is a filmmaker. Tideo Sekwalade. I'm always struggling to pronounce his name. Just gonna kill me. Tideo Sekwalade she's a filmmaker. She's done films before, a lot of them. But then this is I think her heart is closest to this one. So she did this film, which is a beautiful movie. It has a local cast, it has American cast. It's just a nice story. So she read my book, which a common friend of ours introduced her to the books. And she read my books, she liked them, the Klobu series, and then she decided, we met up, and then she said to me, well, I've made a movie, but I'm very passionate about people reading. So how about you do a book based on the movie? So I was like, oh, well, okay. You know, we talked, and I was like, okay. And then she calls again, and she says, well, you know, and I end up watching the movie. And it's not even out in cinemas. So I had to watch it, just me and her privately. And because I loved it so much, I said, you know what? Yeah, let's do it. And it was a great idea. And I like that it's something that is not usually done. So it was just us, you know, just taking a risk and trying to do something because it's always the other way around. You write a book and people make a movie based on the book. And I said yes. And we started the project, and it was fun, and it's been great. And the book has done very, very well. It's totally different to my first 3 books, which is what I like as well.
Yeah, but I was going to say, yeah, I beg your pardon, in the sense that it's not just an adaptation of a movie into a book, if that's the correct term, because it's always the other way around. How then did you treat this particular book so that it is not a replica of the movie?
Well, at first, and I write fiction, and when you write fiction, your characters are yours. So you create them, you develop them, you take them wherever you want to take them. With this book, I'd already watched the movie, and the characters that I was working with were already people with personalities. I already knew the ending of the story and what is going to happen along the way. So I kind of struggled with that, because then I was trying to connect to each and every one of them. But then Dineo said, you know what, you can take the story wherever you want to take it. And I said, okay. So I branched out a lot, you know, from the movie. But also that is because I want people who have read the book, when they watch the movie, to have a different experience. As much as the story, they can still, you know, follow the story and relate to it. But I just want the experiences to be different.
How much of a role did you play in the production of the movie itself, or was it the final product that then inspired the book?
No, I wasn't even there at all. When I got involved, the movie was ready to go to cinema. And, well, there has been a postponement in releasing the movie for various reasons. But when I watched the movie, it was done. Yeah, I just only got involved when it was there and it was ready, and I did a book based on it.
Yeah, and I know authors don't necessarily want to give the whole book away because you want people to actually get their teeth in it and enjoy the experience of turning the pages. I'm also one of those who'd rather have a traditional book as opposed to reading online or any other method. So just give us a synopsis of the Zulu wedding. I saw the trailer. I was totally blown away, and I'm so excited for you.
So Zulu wedding is about a girl who is from Lesotho, and she grows up in South Africa in Joburg. She has a father who's a very famous and wealthy artist, and she has a Zulu name, but she's born in Lesotho, so and she finds out when she's 21, her parents die when she's 10. And then when she's 21, she finds out that actually she has a Zulu name because her mother comes from a Zulu family somewhere in the rural areas. And her mother was supposed to marry a king somewhere, but her parents made a deal and she was the bargain. So she runs off, and basically the book just tells a story of her, being a runaway, living in New York, going through a lot of things, trying to be a dancer, and then eventually she's forced to come back to South Africa, and she finds herself, having to face the rural people with KwaZulu-Natal, and the story just changes there because then she's been running away for 7 years, trying to not be forced to go and get married in KwaZulu-Natal. But the moment she sets foot there, everything changes because there's just this.
There's always a twist. The elements of drama, intrigue, betrayal, love.
Because there's this overwhelming connection with the place, which scares her because she's been running away from it. And but the book I left the ending to the movie, so the book ends in a cliffhanger.
Oh, and then of course there's anticipation for a sequel.
I'm not doing a sequel, so it's not going to happen.
Yeah. Oh, wow. And when people react to your material, how does that make you feel as an author?
It makes me feel so great. And because I'm not the reactive person, like I don't get excited and scream and do all that stuff. So I just, I'm not frigid, but still. So it's very humbling. And it's been 4 years of this book, but every time somebody says just how great, how much they love my book, how much the books have inspired them to write and to read, it's just still feels like how, I mean, I just wrote and that was it. And also I think one of the greatest things that I'm really proud of after all this is that reading is cool. All of a sudden, people are reading. People love books. That there are book clubs that get formed.
Yeah, no, we've done away with with that stereotype that black people don't read.
The reading culture has gone, and I'm happy to have contributed to that.
If you were to compare yourself, and it may be an unfair question, to any other fiction female writer, I don't even want to throw in the name Angela Makolwa, because for me that had been one of the scariest literature that I had read, fiction that is. So for you, who would you say, in terms of your writing style, you also emulate?
I don't think, and Angela, and I like Angela. I know her personally, and I think she was one of the, if you're talking about a black female writer, I mean, it was, and those are the books that we were reading, because that there's a name and there's a setting that sounds familiar. It's Makola. Oh, it could be someone I know. And there was Red Ink, there was Black Widow Society, and they're all great books. And I always laugh and say about Angela that she has the darkest imagination in terms of what she writes. And this is a beautiful books, and she doesn't look like it. I always say that you wouldn't expect to have such a mind. But I'm a big fan of hers, and but I don't have someone that I would say I emulate in terms of what I write. And the thing also is that, and this is also maybe why I don't have a publisher, because my writing is very, it's very casual, you know. It's not formal. Like, I don't conform to your literature, you know,
standards,
whatever, yeah, boxes or rules that are there in terms of how you write, how you structure a sentence, you know, how you say this and say that. So I kind of did my own thing, and luckily it worked for me. I just needed to do books that anybody can read.
And it's that accessibility that you're talking about. But albeit that you self-published, we'll talk about what that process entails, but you're also readily available at retail stores. So what exactly does that entail, being a self-published author?
It's, you know, it took me over a year to even get my book, one book in a bookshop, because bookshops don't want self-published writers for reasons some I understand. It's because it's the whole process of publishing is costly. It means sometimes you don't have money to print, and so sometimes you can't, you know, supply them with stock. So that is one of the reasons, and it's great for me because usually they didn't take self-published writers at all, and they did take my books, and my books have done so well. They've all been #1. You know.
Wow.
So I think also what I'm seeing now is there's a change in terms of you know, being very hostile to self-published writers. So there has been some improvement. They're taking them, but look, I'm just grateful for everything. I mean, like, I walk into exclusive books. There's a whole shelf.
Wow.
Just,
hey, I mean, I just get goosebumps.
Yeah, of just my books, and I have a large following, and we talk about this. I tell people, my readers, guys, do you remember where we started though, in 2014, 2015, where I was selling the book from the boot of my car, and people would have to come and open the boot, and they'd buy books, and I would meet people somewhere, and it was such a, it has been so much work.
Yeah. It sounds like it's more about a spiritual fulfillment as well, and that you're living up to your wildest dreams and expressing your creativity. But is there a monetary reward, in the sense that you can be richly rewarded as a self-published author?
Yeah, there is, but also I just want to say it took me about a year and a half to actually just see the money in it. Not even a year and a half. For the first 2 years of my journey with publishing books, I sold a lot of books, but I did not have money, because, and this is, it was not maybe me making mistakes and, you know, spending money. I knew what the goal was, because I know that it's not about how many items you sell. It's about you. It's about the doors that having books that do very well open for you. It's about, so I would make money, and then I would invest it back into the business. I would get invited to places. I would pay for my own flights. I would do stuff for free, because I needed to make contacts. I needed to make friends and have these people, you know, be with me, you know, throughout my journey. So I invested everything I would make into just trying to make this, you know, a lasting project, which is going to, you know, maintain me in the long run.
Yeah, and I mean, it's that, that adage that if you don't invest or believe in yourself enough, you can't trust somebody else to take that risk.
So I wasn't going to just have books and sell thousands of them and then, you know, have money and just, you know, I had to use that money to just make also my own footprint and just build my image and my brand, and just have relationships with people that are going to last very long.
Yeah. So for especially young people that are looking for instant gratification, and the millennials that think that everything is just going to magnificently happen in their lives, what is your advice and words?
You have to be patient. You can't, you know, I could have just sold this. I mean, they're still selling. I could be sitting at home and just collecting the money that comes with it. But I think it's very important to build a foundation in everything that you do. You know, do your groundwork, have your support, solid support structure, and sometimes you have to make some compromises. You know, like there are things that you are going to be asked to do, places you're going to be asked to go to for free. Well, I wouldn't do that now, but it's something that I did earlier in the journey for this, and it has worked well for me because, you know, I can go back to those people and we have a working relationship with them.
Yeah. So
it doesn't, just be patient and don't rush money. Just, I mean, if you have an opportunity to make more money from very less in the long run, take that opportunity. But yeah, just build and learn and research and learn as much as you can. When I published Hlobo, I knew nothing about publishing. I just knew that I had no plan, I knew nothing, but I did my research as I was going along.
Is this a form of escapism for you from your day job? That as a journalist, you know, we're bombarded with issues of politics and the land issue and all sorts of other dynamics in society. Yeah.
Well, look, I work from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. because that's just the nature of the job. What I've always tried to avoid is to have my writing as my main source of income, where I'm under pressure to write and sell a book, otherwise I won't be able to eat. So it's a hobby, but plus a business. It's something I do, but it's also a business, and I don't want to be too reliant on it emotionally and spiritually, because then I would not leave my house for 2 months just sitting there typing away. So it's not my main, and you know what I like, because I work in the news environment and I'm in editing, so all the stories, you know, a lot of stories come to me, so I know them before they go into it. And it's such a heavy, you understand, it's just a very, very heavy on your mind and emotionally, this job that you are doing. So when I get home, I don't want to watch news. Do you know what I want to watch? I want to watch the Kardashians.
I certainly didn't expect that. I wasn't ready.
All the crazy reality shows, I watch them just to unwind. You know, like you watch and you think, but what is happening? What is the
world has gone crazy today. I'm afraid we're out of time, but thank you so much. and we're so privileged and blessed to have you in studio with us. And we hope that many other budding or aspiring writers would also take up your inspiring story going forward. But thanks indeed for joining us. That's Busan-Dube. She is an acclaimed writer, bestseller of all her material. Of course, the movie is coming out, Zulu Wedding, sometime in September. So you can hook us up on social media at Afro Worldview, #Afro Woman in Focus. For now, though, for myself and the technical crew, be abundantly blessed.